Imagine a quiet mountain town until a 49-ton homemade tank rolls down Main Street, crushing buildings like paper. This wasn't the military. It was one man, a local mechanic, who sealed himself inside and declared war on his neighbors. Why? And how did a small-town feud explode into one of the strangest rampages in American history? Before he became a name that would echo across the internet, Marvin Heemeyer was, by all appearances, just another small-town welder. Born in South Dakota in 1951, he served in the Air Force, learned his trade, and eventually settled in Granby, Colorado, a mountain town with fewer than 2,500 people. Locals knew him as smart, skilled, and even charming at times. He ran Mountain View Muffler, a small repair shop where his precision welding earned him respect. But beneath the surface, Marvin wasn't the type to back down from a fight. Friends remembered his stubborn streak, a man who could be warm one moment and unforgiving the next. He carried grudges like they were fuel. For years, his life seemed steady. He worked hard, fixed cars, and enjoyed the quiet of Granby. But small towns have long memories, and small disputes can fester into lifelong battles. And for Marvin, one land deal in the 1990s would light the fuse that changed everything. But how does a business disagreement turn into the creation of a homemade tank? That's where Marvin's story takes a dark turn. In the mid-1990s, Marvin spotted what looked like the perfect deal, a 2-acre lot on the edge of Granby. For $42,000, it became the home of his muffler shop, a smart move that should have secured his future. But not long after, trouble moved in next door. A company called Mountain Park Concrete, run by businessman Cody Dochev, bought the adjoining land to build a massive batch plant. To Marvin, this wasn't just bad news, it was a death sentence for his business. The dust, the constant truck traffic, the noise, he believed it would drive customers away. Marvin protested, he filed complaints, he pleaded with the town council to stop the project. But instead of siding with him, officials approved the zoning change. Construction began, and Marvin felt the walls closing in. Worse still, the new development blocked his easiest access to the town's sewer line. When Marvin couldn't connect, Granby fined him over $2,500. To him, this wasn't just bureaucracy, it was corruption. He appealed, filed lawsuits, wrote letters, but every single effort was denied. In Marvin's eyes, he wasn't just losing a fight with a neighbor, he was being crushed by a system that bent the rules for the powerful while grinding down the little guy.
You have given me license, through your example, to do what I need to do. When I do this, that levels the playing field in my favor. So now we've got a lopsided playing field. Because when I come back at you, I'm going to destroy your side of the playing field. I'm going to destroy.
And once that thought took root, it never left. If the game was rigged against him, Marvin decided, then he would build his own rules. And his answer wouldn't be a lawsuit. It would be a machine. By 2003, Marvin had stopped believing in appeals or compromise. Instead, he placed his faith in a 49-ton Komatsu bulldozer he had purchased at auction. To the outside world, it was just another piece of heavy machinery. But inside a closed shed on his property, Marvin was secretly transforming it into something no one had ever seen before. Over the course of 18 months, he worked in silence. Layer by layer, he armored the machine with thick steel plates, some reinforced with concrete over a foot thick. It was impenetrable. Bullets would bounce off like pebbles. He rigged the cabin with multiple cameras, each shielded by bulletproof glass, and connected them to monitors inside so he could see in every direction. Air compressors blasted dust away from the lenses. He built custom cooling systems, mounted rifle ports, and stocked the interior with food, water, and firearms. And most chilling of all, there was no door. When the time came, Marvin used a crane to lower the armored shell onto the dozer and welded himself inside. Once he climbed in, there would be no way out. He even left behind audio tapes where he claimed God had chosen him for this mission. On one recording, Marvin declared, "Sometimes reasonable men must do unreasonable things." This wasn't construction, it was preparation for war. And on June 4, 2004, the world would finally see what Marvin had built and what he was willing to destroy. June 4, 2004. A Friday afternoon afternoon in Granby started like any other, but by 2:30 p.m., the town was in chaos. With a deafening crash, Marvin burst through the walls of his shed, driving his armored machine straight into the street. Witnesses couldn't believe their eyes. This wasn't a bulldozer anymore. It was a fortress on tracks, unstoppable and unrecognizable. His first target was clear, the Mountain Park concrete plant. The Killdozer smashed through fences and walls, ripping the building apart as workers scrambled for safety. Marvin didn't stop. He rolled straight into the town itself, and building after building fell before the steel beast.
Town hall, the local newspaper office, a bank, a hardware store, even the home of a former mayor. Each one crumbled under 49 tons of rage. The Granby police fired over 200 rounds at the machine. They tried tear gas. They even called in SWAT. Nothing worked. At one point, a construction vehicle tried to block Marvin's path. He slammed into it without hesitation, shoving it aside like it was made of cardboard. Nothing seemed capable of slowing him down. For nearly 2 hours, Granby was a battlefield, and one man was winning. But even a machine built to be unstoppable has its limits, and Marvin was about to find his. For nearly 2 hours, Marvin's armored bulldozer cut through Granby like a knife through paper. But eventually, even the Killdozer met something it couldn't crush. As Marvin plowed into Gamble's hardware store, the ground beneath him gave way. The 49-ton machine was simply too heavy for the structure's foundation. With a thunderous crack, the floor collapsed and the bulldozer sank halfway into the basement. Marvin tried desperately to break free. He rocked the machine back and forth, gunning the engine, grinding the treads, but the Killdozer wouldn't budge. For the first time that day, he was stuck. Surrounded, trapped inside the cab he had welded shut, Marvin faced the end of his plan. He had built a machine designed to be indestructible, but it had become his own prison. Moments later, a single gunshot echoed from inside the dozer. Marvin Heemeyer had taken his own life. It took authorities hours to cut into the armored shell. Blowtorches, power saws, even small explosives barely made a dent. Only after tearing through the steel and concrete could they reach Marvin's body. The rampage was finally over, but the shockwaves were just beginning. Because once the dust settled, the town and the world was left asking, what had Marvin truly accomplished? When the dust finally settled, Granby looked like a war zone. 13 buildings lay in ruins. The damage was estimated at more than $7 million. And yet, by some miracle, not a single other person was killed. Whether that was by design or by pure luck is still debated to this day. The machine itself, Marvin's armored bulldozer, became almost mythical. The authorities feared it would turn into a shrine for angry sympathizers, so they dismantled it piece by piece, ensuring no trace of it could ever be rebuilt. But Marvin Heemeyer's story didn't disappear. Instead, it spread online, where it took on a second life. To some, he became a modern folk hero, a man pushed too far, who fought back against what he saw as corruption and injustice. To others, he was nothing more than an extremist, a man who nearly turned a town dispute into a massacre. And that's the uncomfortable legacy of the Killdozer. It blurs the line between protest and terrorism, between victim and villain, between justice and vengeance. So, what do you think? Was Marvin Heemeyer a hero who stood against corruption, or a man consumed by vengeance? Let me know in the comments.